right, good morning, everybody. We're going to try to be more controversial than that last one, which didn't really go far enough, I think. I think many of us in this room have implemented discovery tools in the last 5 years or so. This is something that academic libraries around the world have been doing as a way of helping our users find information in a way that makes more sense to people who are raised on Google. When you can search across multiple resources at once, it becomes easier to find information. And we've implemented these tools, and we've explicitly in our marketing, or implicitly at least, by placing a search box front and center on the main page of the library, we've told our users, this is where you should start your searches. This is where you should go. So we've forced a paradigm shift in how our users find information, and yet we haven't looked very carefully at what that shift means in terms of what sorts of information they're actually finding and using. So this is a study that is trying to get at that on a large scale across multiple institutions, across multiple sets of publisher data, and across multiple different web-scale discovery tools. There have been some local studies, some smaller scale studies that have looked at implementation of a discovery tool at a particular institution and looked at usage before and after. And so Doug Way at Grand Valley State University, for instance, showed that there was an increase in usage in a number of different ways after implementation of Summon at that institution. But it was a single institution and a single discovery tool. This is an example of vendor marketing, and we chose WorldCat Local, but we could have easily chosen any number of other sources that show that at one or two institutions there is measurable uptake in usage after implementation of a discovery tool. So these descriptive statistics show that there is an increase in usage in some ways at some institutions. We want to go deeper than that. We want to go broader than that and see whether there's a significant increase across a range of institutions and a range of tools. And we're asking a fairly basic question: does implementation of a discovery service impact journal usage? We know and we recognize that the point of discovery tools is that they find more than just article content, more than just journal information. They search across books and they search across a range of other types of information, but we're measuring just journal usage. And within that, we're measuring just publisher-hosted journal content. So we're not looking at the increase or decrease of usage in aggregator packages. We're not looking at ebook usage. We're not looking at print book usage. This is publisher-hosted journal content. There are four major web-scale discovery tools. There's EBSCO Discovery Service, or EDS, Ex Libris Primo, Serial Solutions Summon, and OCLC's WorldCat Local. And so we're looking at all of these different tools. Web-scale discovery tools, just a quick overview of how they work. They're a single source for finding information from a wide range of different types of information sources. So it's a place where you can search for content from books, from articles, and locally hosted content and material out on the open web, and so on. They have metadata and full text available, some combination of those things, and you can search across all of them at once. The content is pre-indexed or pre-harvested, depending on how it's added to the system, but the key there is that before you even do your search, there is a database of information that you search for. So it's a fast single search in a single search box. The information is pulled in from a variety of different sources. So you harvest MARC records from your local OPAC. Publisher metadata and often publisher full text is fed into these beforehand. Abstracting and indexing tools are covered in these as well, so something like MLA bibliography or PsycInfo. You can pull in information from your institutional repository or any number of other choices of your own, and then things like HathiTrust that are on the open web are also available in these tools. If you get excited about the fact that the Red Sox have won 3 World Series in the last decade, you might search on the Red Sox, yes, and you would find books and articles and newspaper articles and journal articles and so on. So it's a wonderful and easy way of searching. an assumption here is that at most institutions, you have a relatively stable user base. You don't, unless you're changing your FTE dramatically, adding or subtracting students or adding or subtracting a large number of faculty, the total search effort should stay roughly the same year after year. It's obviously going to fluctuate a little bit, but it's not going to rise or fall dramatically unless the user population or perhaps the curriculum changes in a radical way. But it's unlikely that at most institutions that's happening year after year. Put another way, if you have the same number of students and the same number of assignments or the same number of faculty writing the same number of articles, there are not more hours in the day for them to do more research. So they're going to be doing roughly the same amount of work year after year after year. If that's true, and you implement a discovery tool, and again, if you implement a discovery tool and you say this is the place where you should be starting your research, then discovery tools should take up an increasing amount of that finite time that any one user has for doing research. Discovery tools should draw users away from other search tools, from the abstracting and indexing tools and from our OPAC and so on, because we've told our users that you should go here instead of those sources, and there, again, is no time to do more searching. Those search tools are more or less effective than discovery tools, and so you're going to find different types of information. It's going to alter the overall productivity of searches. You're going to find more or less, and it's probably a variation depending on your topic and so on. And it will alter the overall efficiency of users. In other words, they're going to find more or less full text content based on those searches. So we assume then that discovery tools have some sort of effect on what people find and how. There have been prior studies, as I mentioned. Most of these have looked at, or all of these have looked at local use only, so it's a single institution, a single implementation of a discovery tool. And they've shown substantial increases after implementation, but this is descriptive data only, basically saying, yes, it increased, not why it increased or not whether it's statistically significant. Some publishers have reported decreased usage of content, and that is largely anecdotal, and certainly not every publisher has reported that. So we're trying to go a little bit deeper in this analysis. We set out to gather data on libraries that implemented discovery tools. We created a list of libraries that had implemented the various discovery tools by searching on libwebcats and compiling a list of implementation. We then did a survey. We contacted these libraries based on this initial list, and we asked them if, in fact, they had implemented that discovery tool that was listed on libwebcats. We asked the implementation date, which is crucial, the month and the year, because our entire project is based on before and after usage. We asked if they had the search box on the main page. We didn't, and we asked if they'd done any kind of marketing or PR about this. 149 libraries gave us approval to use their data, and we chose 24 libraries for this initial phase of the study. There's 6 libraries from each of the 4 major discovery tools, and again, those are WorldCat Local, EDS, Primo, and Summon. We tried to do libraries that had implemented at roughly the same time period, and we tried to do libraries that were roughly equal in size across the 4 discovery tools, a roughly equal range of sizes across the 4 discovery tools. And these are medium to large academic libraries. You can see that we have 20 libraries from the US, and then 1 each from the UK, from Australia, from New Zealand, and Canada. And I think importantly, these are all English language institutions, and we're looking at English language journal content. There are 10 ARL libraries in this group, and then they range in size down from there. And we've got the WorldCat book holdings on there as an approximation of library size. And you can see that the average is 1.1 million volumes. The high is 2.6 million, and then there's a school that has just under 300,000 as the smallest of these institutions. All of the Primo, Summon, and EDS libraries implemented their discovery tool in 2011, and that was the date we were aiming at. We were unable to get WorldCat Local libraries from our initial set that implemented in 2011. There was only 1. There were 2 WorldCat local libraries in our set that implemented in 2012 and 3 that implemented in 2010. I'm now going to turn it over to John McDonald, who's going to talk about the data set.
So my part will definitely not be controversial as Jenica. So my name's John McDonald. I most recently worked at the Claremont Colleges, and according to the Brits, I'm on garden leave. I'm about to take a new job at the University of Southern California Libraries as the Associate Dean for Collections. So thank you, Michael, for introducing the data set, or introducing the study. And now it's my unenviable task to describe the process we took to collect the actual data, the actual usage data, merge it together and build an actual usable data set so we could do our statistical analysis, which would help us answer our research questions using statistics. I must have touched something on there. The slideshow thing came up, sorry. Okay, great, thank you. So Michael already told you about 24 libraries. It's important to note that because of the nature of the study, we asked the libraries, we guaranteed confidentiality to the libraries about the use of their data. We only wanted to report the data in aggregated form. So we're not going to tell you who these 24 libraries are now. At some later date, after we seek approval and they see the study and whatnot, I'm sure they'll allow us to name the libraries. But right now, we're just keeping that point confidential. The 4 discovery tools, Michael mentioned, we're not keeping confidential, so everybody knows those 4 tools. They're the big ones. Then we selected 6 publishers to use their usage data, and these 6 publishers were nice enough to actually provide us with the library's counter usage data, counter reports, to speed up the processing that we needed to have. So we also guaranteed our publishing study group that we were not going to identify them during this stage of the study. And certainly to let them know if there was anything really very controversial, and we'll get to that part a little bit later. But the study does include over 9,000 journals, so you'll be able to understand that the publishers we selected were not little itty-bitty tiny publishers that only publish small numbers of journals. We ended up with a data set of over 9,000 journals, and that included over 150,000 observations. And our definition of the observation is the combination of the library and the journal and its usage. So you could take 9,000 journals and multiply it by 24 and come up with a little bit more than 150,000. So we had about 150,000 observations, and it turned out that we had over 140,000 usable observations. Some of the observations had to be removed if we didn't have counter reports for all 24 months of the study, and also for a couple of other reasons. So our methodology, again, it was to take the counter JR1 reports for the 12 months before implementation and the 12 months after implementation date. The implementation month fell into the before, so could have been implemented on the first day of the month or the 30th day of the month. We couldn't get that granular with it, but in order to make sure that we were covering the same time period for before and after, we were covering 12 months. So every single school, whether they released it in August, in the beginning of the fall semester, or in January of the next semester, each institution would have covered the same set of academic semesters. And our dependent variable is the net change in usage from that 12 months before and 12 months after. Just a few notes about the data set. As I just mentioned, we had to exclude any journals that didn't have usage reported in a counter report for all 24 months. So if a particular library didn't have the title and it wasn't reported in January of 2011, then we had to leave that journal for that library out of the data set. A couple of caveats. We had and have limited ability to control for changes in things like aggregator content, as libraries may have selected or deselected aggregator content that represented publisher content, things like backfile access, or expanded holdings that weren't represented in the way that we could identify them and remove them from the data set. And I mentioned earlier about outliers. So there were some outliers in the data set that we did have to analyze and remove. So those could have been journals that had really large increases in usage or really large decreases in uses. Here's a chart of the standard scores for every single one of those 159,000 observations, and the data points in red, it'll look fairly obvious, the data points in red were ended up being the outliers. It was around 100 titles or observations out of 159,000 that we had to remove. So just a point about the statistics, the standard score is the number of standard deviations away from the mean for the whole data set. And what we selected was anything with 10 or more standard deviations away from the mean, either above or below, were removed from analysis. We also added up the total journals and developed this pie chart just to make sure that each of the discovery services were equally represented in the study. And as you can see, pretty much every one of them were about equal, so about 25 to 30% for each one of them. And this chart shows all of the institutions grouped by the Discovery Service. So there's 6 bars for each one of the Discovery Services from left to right, EDS to WorldCat. And we just wanted to make sure that we didn't have large variance across the size of the institution. So this is the total number of journals that institution had represented in the data set. And you know, just one interesting thing to note is the larger institutions tend to be able to select Primo and Summon. Meanwhile, EDS and WorldCat had a larger range from large to small libraries that had that discovery service. And then without identifying the publishers, we wanted to show the scale of the publishers in the data set. And as you can see from this pie chart, we had 2 very large publishers represented, 1 mid-sized publisher, and then 3 smaller, more specialized publishers in the data set. But it is 6 of our biggest publishers in academic research journal literature. And this bar chart shows the libraries from left to right by total size, total or average usage of journals. The blue bars were the year before they implemented their discovery tool, and the red bars are the year after. And as you can see, some of the schools went down in their total journal usage for these publishers represented in the data set, and many others went up. So we just wanted to make sure there weren't any obvious problems with any of the institutions in the data set. And then this chart also, another bit of descriptive statistics. We charted all of the publishers grouped by their discovery service and the percentage and change in usage. So we wanted to make sure or analyze whether any publisher had major increases or major decreases per discovery tool. And as you can see, some of the publishers went way up in journal usage and in their average usage. Some of them went way down. No single discovery tool increased or decreased the average usage across publishers. So some publishers did very well after implementation of a discovery tool, and some did not do as well for certain discovery tools. So our general observations that helped to inform us as we approached the statistical part of the study were that there's large variations for every institution within those discovery tools. The major variations by publisher within the discovery tools, the chart that I just showed, and some publishers, it seems obvious, but some publishers saw net increases for some discovery tools and not for others, and some experienced actual declines in usage. So now I'll turn it over to Jason to do the actual important statistical study.
So my name is Jason Price. I work for the SCELP Consortium in California, and I get to do the fun part, which is to try to help us look at differences that appear to be there and ask whether they're real differences or just apparent ones. So that's what inferential statistics do, is they say, are these means really different? Are the values that we look at different? So the goals of our inferential statistics were really to determine whether those observed differences are significant or resulted from chance effects, and to determine which of the three factors, library, publisher, discovery service, or even their combination, contributes to determining the differences in usage change at the journal level. So I'll start with kind of an exploratory analysis that separates out each factor, but then end with a comprehensive model. And I want to give you a heads up now that the individual factors that we look at, when not taken into account as the whole model, can be a little misleading. And I'll point that out along the way and show you the complete model at the end. So if you'll bear with me, a couple of basic statistical slides. So what is ANOVA? It's the analysis of variance, and what it does is it looks at each individual observation that we take, each journal that we look at, its change from before to after, and it says how much of that is due to things that we are measuring and know about. Which library did it come from? Which publisher published the journal? Which discovery tool was used and impacted that change? And it separates those factors, the fit, from the residual, which is the error, the things that we can't explain with the factors that we measured. So for a particular observation, let's say it's a change of positive 17 downloads, we might know that a particular library, on average, has 2 more downloads than the average of all libraries. And a particular publisher, on average, has 3 less downloads than the average publisher. And the discovery service impact might be 10 more than the average discovery tool result. Those things are the things that we can take into account and ask about what their influence is. But if our residual error, that part of the observation that we can't explain, is high relative to the numbers we get from looking at the factors we're measuring, then we have to say, well, we can't really tell. These things are there, but the error swamps out any effect that we might be able to see. So, put another way, what we're doing is we're testing to see whether the means for the levels, like the different libraries within a factor, are distinguishable from each other. We have, and I'll show you, F-ratio tests. These are numbers that basically look at the average variability due to the factor versus the average variability due to chance error. If the chance error is high relative to the average variability of the factor, then our F value will be close to 1, and we won't see a difference. We won't be able to distinguish them. If our F value is, if our average variability due to the factor is large relative to the chance error, then the F value will be higher, and we'll be able to detect a difference. So that's it for the statistical background. Now let's get to the questions. So in response to our first question, does usage change vary across libraries? We see the 24 libraries sorted across by mean change across the x-axis, and the mean change plus or minus 2 standard errors on the y-axis. So standard errors, these bars you see, are a measure of the variability around that mean. In general, when the bars overlap, then between different levels of the factor, we can't say they're different. When they don't overlap, they are different. So our initial observation would be that there are some differences among libraries in their mean change. The overall average change was 8.5 uses on the journal level, and our F ratio of about 32 tells us that institution alone is a significant predictor of the mean change in usage after discovery implementation. So whenever, and I'll show you a few of these, so I'm just giving you the background now, whenever we look at a significance value here, if it's below 0.05, that indicates that we can detect a difference. If it's above 0.05, then we cannot. But for single factor ANOVAs, looking just at one variable, we're ignoring the impact of the different discovery tools and journal publishers on this mean change. So this tells us something, but it doesn't take all the information we have into account. So a couple of more just to give you that feel for the individual factors. Now we ask whether usage change varies across publishers. And, sorry, I got to catch up in my notes. The grand mean for the change in usage here is about 8.9. One publisher appears to have a mean change that isn't significantly different from 0, the one on the left. The one on the right appears to have a mean change that's significantly higher than the other 4, and then the other 4 are right along that mean. And again, our significant F value on non-overlapping error bars suggest that mean change did vary across publishers. But this is one of those cases where when we just look at this factor, we actually think there's differences among publishers, that a publisher is significant, but when we put everything together, I'll show you at the end that publisher drops out as an important factor, at least looking at it just alone, or it's in fact not relative to other factors that we take into account. Okay, so this is the big slide. The data shows that the mean usage across the mean usage increase was positive for all discovery tools. So in each case, the usage from the year before to the year after increased. Although we can't distinguish these from industry-wide increases, just the fact that usage tends to go up year to year because we didn't measure a set of libraries that didn't implement discovery tools. So whether they're significantly different from the background, we don't know. But we can say they're different from each other. So it appears that Primo and Summon had a greater increase in in usage of the content we studied than did EDS or WorldCat Local. Okay, and there is the F-test that shows that's a significant test. But when we start to make the model more complex, when we look at discovery service and publisher together, we look at a more complex thing. The means that we just looked at, those 4 different places that we saw the mean change, now we see some of the background behind that, which publishers had more mean change or less. And what our model does is it allows us to look at these things at the same time. So in addition to asking whether we can detect a difference across discovery service and publisher, this two-way model addresses whether the impact of discovery is equivalent for each publisher. And in fact, this is one of the reasons we wanted to do the study in the first place, is that we had heard rumors that some discovery tools were differentially affecting publishers to the point that that was being a concern for the publishers who were finding their usage to be falling. So what the interaction between these two things does is it basically asks statistically, are these lines parallel or not? So what we've done is broken down those bars into, by each discovery tool across the panels, and the different colors represent the different publishers' content. And so again, we're asking, are these lines parallel? So first, we can look at our factor based on discovery tool, and we see those means. We can ask, are those means significant when we look at both? We can look at the means across of the publisher, the mean increase for the publisher, and ask if those are significant. And then we can look at that combination. So our statistics now bring these things together, and what we notice right off is that when we look at publisher, we do not find a significant effect of publisher in the combined data set. So those are kind of drop out of meaningfulness in this model. Then discovery tool, similarly, is above 0.05, and so even the effect of the discovery tool alone disappears when we just look at these two factors. However, what we do see is that the interaction, discovery tool between publisher, is significant, so we're finding that discovery tools affect different usage of different publishers' content differently. But to really do this right, we have to think about the institutions too. And some of you may be wondering, well, what about how much variance there is under the institutions? So the full model, this is the whole thing put together, the statistically most rigorous way to approach the data. we need to recognize that we looked at the 4 different discovery tools, and each publisher's content was represented for each of those 4 discovery tools. However, each library only used one discovery tool, right? So the libraries are actually nested within a discovery tool. Library 1 only used discovery tool 1. Library 7 only used discovery tool 2, 7 through 12. So the beauty of the statistics is that it can partition that variance and help us to look at the whole model and figure out what's going on. And so that's what we do here. We find that, again, publisher alone is not a significant predictor of the mean change in usage. Discovery tool and institution nested within discovery tool are still significant predictors, so we do notice differences just among those alone. But then the impact of the interaction between discovery tool and publisher, that differential effect, and of the impact on different publishers' content within institutions are also significant. So in summary, our results ask, can we detect differences between the discovery tools, services, publishers, and libraries in and/or their interactions? Discovery service, we saw an effect. Publisher, no effect. Library, yes, there's variation due to library. And furthermore, there's a differential discovery service effect by publisher and a differential library effect by publisher. So one of the things we want to do going forward is to make sure this model is giving us the best answer that it can. We're bringing in other libraries, and that we're addressing other possible parts of or impacts, influences on these changes. I'm going to turn it over to Michael.
Right. So we'll wrap up here. Yeah. So just quickly run through these. One of the things we discovered, but we knew this already, is that analyzing usage is a complex task, right? It's not as easy as just saying yes or no, it increased or decreased. No discovery tool increased or decreased usage across all libraries or all publishers. There were variations across the board. Discovery tool and publisher as variables on their own were significant predictors of usage change, and the interaction of the discovery tool and the publisher was significant and important. We know that we need to do some control for libraries that don't have a discovery tool, and we know we need to do some control for the size of the institution. So next steps, what we need to do going forward, because this is the first phase of this study. We need to take into account aggregator full text availability as a factor. We need to control for institution size or enrollment profile. Are there variations by type of institution that may not have a discovery tool at all? For publisher size, for journal subject, we need to look at overall usage trends sort of across libraries in general. So a control group that didn't implement a discovery tool during this time period. And then we also need to look at things like configuration options in the discovery tool. So how were they implemented? How does that interplay with choice of link resolver and so on? We'll be doing a follow-up presentation at UKSG in April. And we'll have a control group then and bring in the additional libraries and bring in these other variables in this further analysis as we've noted above. So now I think we're going to sit and take questions.
Yeah, questions now. Anybody upstairs? Anybody going? I can see a person moving forward, and I think it is none other than, yes it is, it's John Dove. John Dove of Credo. Please speak.
All right, oh, there we go, well, far out. So you squeezed that data until it squealed. That's really something. And I just have a couple of two questions. One is there any chance that the downturn for some publishers with a discovery tool was because it was being discovered somewhere else? And that's why that particular publisher's site saw something drop. And then my more general question is, are you able to disambiguate between what a searcher is actually doing in looking at this content? Are they looking for a known item, this needle in a haystack, but they know the needle when they find it? Or are they looking for a piece of hay in a haystack where they actually don't know, they need some context, they're exploring? Can you disambiguate those two types of usage? Thanks.
So the answer to the second question is no. We did not look at any usage logs from a discovery service to try to analyze what people were doing. So simply counter-reported usage downloads per journal. So there was no ability to be more granular about things being downloaded, and did they actually read them, did they cite them? We weren't able to look at any of that. Someone else on the first one.
So the question about whether the usage might have shifted to other places that content is available, those are the kinds of questions we want to try to address moving forward. First, we wanted to ask, is there a difference? This study focused on a broad set of data to say, are there differences? Yes, now we're seeing those differences. What are they caused by in terms of, is there differences among publishers and aggregator availability, and does that maybe explain it? Those are the kinds of things we plan to look at.
But just to clarify, we looked at counter usage for that publisher as a whole for that institution. So if you were coming from another source and getting to that same publisher content, we would still see that usage go up or down, right? So we don't take into account whether it's coming from an aggregator separately, but we know that the publisher usage went up or down across the board.
Okay, anybody up in gold? Anybody in Colonial? Yes, gold.
I've got a
No one in gold.
No,
What?
Colonial?
yes. I'm
Okay.
sorry. I'm in Colonial. I am wondering.
Name, please.
Yeah, this is Charlie Remy from UT Chattanooga. I am really curious about the role of A&I databases, so indexes without full text in a web-scale discovery world. And so I'd like to know your thoughts on that, but also if you plan on, perhaps in the future down the road, taking a look at, okay, how have the usage statistics for A&I databases changed before and after a implementation of web-scale discovery?
Thanks for the question.
So I think the idea is that discovery tools are going to kill A&I databases, so shouldn't be any usage anymore? No laughs, no. No, we can't. I would say we can't. We didn't look at A&I databases, and that's the other component that was part of the answer to the first question was we did not look at aggregated full-text databases. So a publisher's content can be in both places. They can have it on their own platform, and then we would get the usage from the counter report, or it could have been in an aggregated databases.
For the future? For the future?
For the future,
Yeah,
that's
okay.
that was one of our slide points.
The
yeah.
gentleman at the far back in Carolina, please, and then Chuck. Okay? Gentleman at the back.
Right, I'm a little bit confused. I thought
Sorry, I couldn't hear your name.
I'm sorry. I was a bit confused by the presentation, so I thought Primo and Summon did...
Sorry, I can't get your name. Have you given me your name?
I'm sorry. My name is Vera Lamine. I'm from Marymount University, Electronic Resources Librarian.
Go ahead.
Okay. I thought Primo and Summon did increase usage, more so than EDS or WorldCat, but then in the conclusion you said no tool alone increased all usage for all libraries. So I was just confused.
Okay.
If you
I was
could
confused.
clarify that for me.
Okay.
Sure. So there are differential effects across libraries. However, we did see an effect of just discovery tool alone on usage, and that effect comes from the fact that Primo and Summon in our data set showed higher mean changes, growth in usage than the other two discovery tools. I will say, though, that one of the things we didn't go into, which we plan to look at as well, is the effect size. So we know there are significant differences, but we don't know how much of usage our data allows us to explain. So these models have basically, you have the ability to look at how much of the variance, how much of the change in usage is due to discovery tool or to those factor. In general, it was pretty small with what we had. So we have more work to do to try to make sure we're taking into account other potential variables as well as we can.
Oh, okay, go.
So I brought the slide back up so because Anthony said he was confused by it too. So just note that this is the mean number of downloads that it increased across all libraries. So if you just look at the one for Primo with the 12 and the one for Summon with the 15, there were some libraries that were way higher, and there were some libraries that were way lower, including negatives for both of those. So we found that there were libraries that went up and down by discovery service for each of the publishers across the board. So these are just the averages.
That's most helpful. Chuck.
Chuck Hamaker, University of North Carolina, Charlotte. Two observations. One of them is that we're a veteran of at least two of these systems. And the presence of aggregator content seems, this is anecdotal, I've looked at our usage data, in some instances drives down the counter numbers. Now, I think that's what you're asking. The other is perhaps a more troublesome question that I don't know how you get at. I'm sorry? All right. The level of metadata for individual publishers and articles varies significantly. That is it some type of core metadata? Is it some type of robust metadata? Is it some type of enhanced metadata? Is it full text? And each one of those, maybe you covered it and I missed it. I apologize.
This is for the future, yeah?
Yeah. So we didn't look at the particular types of metadata. We're aware of that certainly as an issue, and we assume that the way that publisher metadata is supplied to the vendors is roughly the same, and the way it's used is different. At least from talking to publishers. But going forward, I think we do need to sort of look at that type of thing for each publisher. And one of the things that we've thought about as going forward is looking at sort of digging in for some particular publishers and particular libraries and looking at that kind of thing in more detail. But it's obviously a factor.
I know of at least 3 levels of metadata in a couple of these systems.
That's a good point, I think. And, okay.
And I think we expected that when we got into our analysis, if that were the case, the publishers, a certain publisher, if they weren't providing robust metadata to a discovery service, would have fallen, they would have been down at the bottom. So it's possible that our friend in green here maybe has something to look at based on their workflows, because they had the largest average decreases across all discovery services. So they might want to take a look at what they're doing. Maybe they are providing bad metadata, but the fact that, like Jason said, because the lines aren't parallel, they go up and down and cross and all kinds of stuff, it's probably not likely for at least the other publishers.
I'm sorry,
I was really impressed with this analysis.
I think, yeah. I have to go upstairs first now. Is anybody in gold? No? Okay. The lady here in the front.
Oh, we had someone in Colonial.
Oh, sorry. Well, we had a Colonial a few minutes ago, so I think next here, okay?
Okay, I'm Marta Dayrup. I'm from Seton Hall University, and I was looking at, at your presentation and thinking you're really doing your analysis really on a very high level. And from what you said, it appears as though the research institutions are just doing more work no matter what discovery system they are doing. And I was wondering if you plan to do any qualitative study of what people are actually doing with these services and how it's changing scholarship.
No, not. I mean, we don't plan to do. I think that's another study.
Okay.
Entirely. We do, though, I think, need to go in, and it's really crucial that we do this control group so that we can see whether these are trends across higher education in general, whether they're trends across large research libraries in general, whether they're trends across particular types of libraries in general. Mm-hmm. So that's really important. But I think getting at the qualitative data about are people publishing more, are they using the journals in different ways, is somebody else's study.
Okay.
Okay, I'm sorry, we're going to have to stop there. Thank you so much. I'm sorry, Ivy, it was you at the back, I do. And I apologize to the person in Colonial. Thank you so much.